Hello, everybody. All right. Well, we jumped over to Anthony. Anthony, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Anthony Orr from BMC Software.
Great. And then Claire?
I'm Claire Agutter from IT Training Zone, also representing the ATO Council that looks after the interests of the ITIL training organisation community.
Hi, Sharon. Are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
If you'd like
Hi,
to.
Sharon.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sharon Taylor. I'm with Aspect Group International, and I was part of the team that came together in London for the Axelos workshop. So I'm really happy to be here and see everybody again.
Yeah, hi everyone. It's Stephen Mann. I work for ServiceNow.
And then we'll jump over. Excellent. Thank you, Stephen. And Stuart Rance.
Hi, I'm Stuart Rance. I work for HP, and I guess I'm here representing me.
Well, great. James, if you want to introduce yourself. And then Peter, if you want to see if you can maybe drop off and drop back in, we can see if we can get you back online. Hi, James. Can you hear us?
Off and on.
No audio from James.
Okay, guys, well, I should be there now. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, you're there.
Hello, Peter.
You got me. Very good.
Well, without further ado, why don't we get started? I mean, Peter, you can give us a little introduction about yourself and your role within Axelos. That would be great.
Sure. Although already I think the outtakes from this recording are going to be the best part of it. So, yeah. Hello, everyone. And I think in fact, Matt, probably apart from yourself, I've physically met everyone, but it's good to see everyone's smiling faces. Yeah. So, hello, everyone. I'm Peter Hepworth. I'm CEO of Axelos, global best practice. As I think many people now are aware, Axelos has recently formed, 1st of July, to take over the best management practice portfolio, what still a lot of people call affectionately a swirl. We're now Axelos, and lots going on, and looking forward to discussing with you.
Excellent, great, thank you, Peter. Well, the intent of this call is really to kind of open up the public forum and get some more conversation started at a public level that will enable us to kind of hear, you know, what happened at this local meetup that Axelos put together with you know, some of those on this call today, amongst some others. What the intent was of that meeting. What are next steps? What can we expect in the short term, long term from Axelos as far as communication? Obviously, there's a undertide of fear, I guess, that the investments made both emotionally and from a capital perspective and from a personal development perspective, that if you're investing into frameworks or a practice that someone else has control over, how does that affect my career, my business, my organization, my strategy, all those things? And so I think we're all in agreement that it's a valid concern, and there's a reason to address many of this. I think what we want to know is, how are we addressing it? What was the outcome of this meeting? And kind of give us some background, like, how did this all happen? Who pulled it together? It seems to be a bit of a a widespread group of folks. But still maybe mostly European and UK focused. So maybe we can address some of those topics and discussions right out of the gate. So Peter, do you want to kind of set us a tone, like what was the background for this this meetup that happened, and your general perspective on it and the management's perspective from Axelos?
Good. Yeah, that makes sense. Just to give a bit of context, because we're all talking about these workshops. Maybe not everyone who's following this. So just to again, Axelos is a new company. We're a startup, and we want to look afresh at many areas. So, having started up on 1st of July, we wanted to quickly, though, get a market, a user context, and a background to what we're planning to take the products, the portfolio, and the company forward. So I think it's pretty standard, the desire to have an open discussion, and this was part of it. I mean, it really was just the start, because, as you mentioned, we're an international company, but we're London-based. Really pleased to welcome. We had a number of people flying in from the States. We had representation. I think people, although they may be, there were different nationalities involved, but and many of you on this call, but we're all working globally with different focuses. So I think we actually had broader representation than maybe just reading a list of names would suggest. But we want to do this ongoing. We're trying to figure out the best ways to keep this open approach and to have a regional focus. So Latin America, Australia, and so on, and the best ways to do that. So and also in market in the US, which we're actively trying to organise for this calendar year. So it hasn't finished. I think it was a great start. But we often get constrained by numbers of people in the room, even Hangouts, which is a great idea. We only got 10 people here. So I think the way we take that and really broaden it is we've also been, in the spirit of open communication, we've been very public. So we shared literally the wall charts and all the good ideas. That we put the pictures up those. They're on our Google Plus site if for those people who haven't had a chance to see them, as well as putting out summaries of the ideas. So that the reason was not to do this in isolation, to involve the community, involve users, and this was the start of it.
To any particular comment, let's kick it off to a positive note here. What were some of the great takeaways that some of the folks who attended, what were some of those great takeaways that they had?
It looks as though everyone's a little bit too polite to jump in first. So
I was just going to say that's not a good sign if there were no great takeaways. And Stephen, you're
well, I was being shy here because when I start to speak, I don't give many chance to other people to speak. So I was waiting for others to start to speak first.
Yeah, I can believe that.
I was speaking, but I forgot to unmute my microphone.
It's just as well none of us work with technology on a day-to-day basis.
Sorry, Stuart, do you want to jump in, Stuart, and take?
Yeah, there were some really good takeaways for me. There was an openness to listen to what people were saying. There was a recognition of the need to talk to people from a wide variety of geographies and industries and relationships to IT service management. There was a recognition of the real fear that some people have of change, whilst also a recognition of the need for change. And I think there's a lot of good opportunities going forwards. I'm not going to rehash all the outputs that we came up with. They've been shared well enough already. But I will share the feeling I got out of it, that change is going to happen, but it's going to happen in a controlled way and in a way that I think is going to work.
Excellent. Anybody else want to jump in? Stephen, did you want to jump in?
Yeah. I mean, one of the key things for me was finally realizing that most of us don't have a complete or full appreciation of how complex the ITIL ecosystem is, that there are so many different people or groups of people involved, and also the way in which change, whichever change or whichever type of change it is, how long change can potentially take given all of the vested interests.
Interesting. So I'll just continue right from left. Sharon, do you want to give us some of your comments, initial reactions to the
Yeah, sure. I mean, I I knew a lot of the people in the room going into the meeting, but I think what I came out with was a greater appreciation from how each of us, who all, everyone in the room, has a vested interest in one perspective of the ITIL ecosystem. I like that term, Stephen, or than the others. And I think we learned a better appreciation of the kinds of anxious feelings, the kind of concerns, the kind of innovative ideas, and the things that people feel make ITIL successful today and how it can be successful going forward. So I came away with a greater appreciation of the varied perspectives that there are. We have a tendency, at least I do sometimes, to get tunnel vision and think that my way of looking at the ITIL world, because I work in it so directly, is the only way sometimes. So it was really good to see everybody openly sharing their ideas and their fears, really. And the other thing I think I came away with that I liked a lot was the fact that while Axelos was there to lead and organize the workshop, it was clear that they were there to listen and to take a back seat and to let all of us have our voices heard front and center. And I think that was very useful, and it set the tone for a really successful couple of days. So that's kind of what I took out of it. It was very promising.
Excellent. Thanks, Sharon. Jayne, did you want to give us your perspective?
Jayne sent a message to us on the chat saying that she can't connect, saying the call is full.
Okay. Maybe that's because she's on it. Let me try to eject her, and maybe she can come back in.
You just ejected Jayne Finister.
Just the visual of James Finister being ejected is just making me giggle. I can't.
Yeah, that's okay. That actually probably worked out. Just kidding, James. Clear.
I think James has been ejected from smarter places than
yeah. I mean, the funny thing is, Matt, that at the workshop it was very interesting how well we played together, how nicely we played together, and you've completely ruined it by unnecessarily. But it is a serious point, though, that I often feel when you see conversations on social media, Twitter in particular, that people seem to be at loggerheads a lot of the time around ITIL, and I guess in part due to the misuse or mis-selling, say, of ITIL. So to have so many people with different perspectives and maybe even different needs from the workshop, and ultimately whatever happens with ITIL, it was really surprising and somewhat refreshing that I think we agreed virtually all of the time.
Yeah, Jayne Groll said something to me right after the workshop, after the last day, while we were in the bar, if I can confess that we were there. And she said that every one of us could have taken a very defensive posture about our position and our opinions. And we actually, none of us did that. We were all very open to the fact that no single person in the room has all the answers, and I really appreciated Jayne recognizing that, and it was a really valuable insight, and I think that kind of speaks to what the tone was like for the whole entire workshop.
That's great. Well, I think Jayne just jumped back in. Jayne, we were just talking about the initial reaction to the workshop. Maybe you could give us your reaction.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm glad to be back in, so thank you for that. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you great.
Okay, good. So, and I've blogged a little bit about this since the workshop. I kind of feeding on what Sharon said, I think the absence of political agenda was a very key takeaway, that this was one of the opportunities where people gathered together and really openly talked about the past, talked about the present, talked about the future, with the common understanding that value to the customer was going to be our theme today and tomorrow. And I think that really made a lot of sense. We didn't look at We didn't point fingers. We didn't spend a lot of time looking at what was wrong. We spent a lot of time talking about what could be right. And it was a very, very dynamic group. There was a lot of interesting debate and discussion, but I think that all in all, we came out with a very positive feeling that the future was looking bright. Complicated, but bright.
Excellent. So back to you, Claire. Sorry, you were going to give us reaction.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what everybody else has said about the lack of agenda. One of the things that I've always liked about ITIL is how passionate people are about it and how people do love it. And that's what you had in the room. You didn't have sort of vendor perspectives. You had people who wanted to make a bright future for ITIL. But one of the other things that was really good for me was because we had people like Sharon Taylor there, and we had some of the Cabinet Office people who've been involved with ITIL since, well, pretty much day one. It was really nice to see the history and the context in which some of the decisions have actually been made, how the qualification scheme came to be, in the structure it is at the moment, how the books were written, why decisions were made, because that's never been really very clear. And a lot of the development of ITIL has been constrained by the fact that it was government-owned, the way that the qualification scheme's been accredited, and it's interesting to see why those decisions were made, because that's not been very visible to us as stakeholders, and it's something certainly that I hope we can see from Axelos is a lot more visibility about why decisions are made. Yes, those decisions might not always be popular, but it would be good to understand why things are as they are, and that's something I'm hopeful for the future.
Excellent, thanks, Claire. And then Anthony, would you like to give us a perspective?
Yeah, there was really a lot of passion in the room as it relates to improving ITIL, as it relates to the challenges we had. When you really think about the different people in the room, a lot of collaboration and cooperation among us as it relates to common challenges and the way that we thought about making ITIL better so it's more consumable for the end users, the customers, the executives, and so forth, so they can really understand what the value is as it relates to the practice of service management. And not just ITIL itself, but ITIL combined with other best practices like the project management practices and so forth. But like I said, one of the things that was really great is the team that was put together and the passion in the room as it relates to moving forward and making this better, not just for our individual companies or our individual perspectives, but for society and the ITIL community as a whole.
Super, excellent. And then, Andy, did you want to give us a perspective?
Yes, what I enjoyed most is because I'm just simply an ITIL practitioner. I'm not one of the experts. I'm not somebody with a badge. I'm not somebody with extensive, incredible, in-depth ITIL knowledge, or I'm not coming from a training company. And for me to see how people from all parts of the ITIL ecosystem are and what kind of challenges they have, or how they think, or how they work with ITIL, or there were quite a lot of things to learn and understand of the challenges and the actual working, like customs, to say that, of the training organizations, which was really eye-opening for me. And I could just say the same what everybody said. There was lots of passion. There were no single standalone agenda. There were no political agenda, and it was really good to connect with Axelos and to feel that they are listening. So the hashtag created for we are all listening and we are all there to make something better and different was really, really good. So it was just a brilliant 2 days, I have to say.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that. That's a great perspective, and I think we should come back to you on that perspective because it's a unique one, and it represents probably the vast majority of the community, and what we want to really do this all for is IT practitioners as a whole, right? As a global organization. So Peter, with that said, let's jump back to you for a second and get into some of the meats of things and I guess concerns on people's minds. And then we'll open it up to the rest for any commentary on it. I'd have to say probably the greatest thing that I hear the most, and certainly in preparation for this webinar that we're doing here, is the concern around controls, trademarks, rights of intellectual property, this is a challenging and difficult area, right? But it's also the one that everyone is focused on because we want knowledge to grow. Who owns it? Who has the rights to it? How do I redistribute it? How do I share it, utilize it, leverage it? Do you want to give us some perspective on, where's the mindset today? What was some key takeaways out of the workshops for you on that?
Sure. Yeah. So we didn't. I mean, we probably discussed so much. I don't think there was a focus on the points you've just been raising. But specifically on that point, it's an area we're looking at right now, and as you remember from a 1st of July get-go, getting ready for a 1st of January true start. We have to manage the continuity of that process, and I think that was a point raised earlier, that uncertainty isn't helpful for anyone. So we're trying to get through a lot, and we'll be communicating as soon as we can. In the case of the workshops and that spirit of openness, that's the way we started. As far as the IP strategy and so on, there's a great basis that is currently in force from the Cabinet Office. And yes, we're reviewing it, and we have the advantage of taking on board the previous discussions, the points raised at that workshop, points raised to us generally. So I hope you'll understand. I can't get any more specific right now. I just while we're talking about what's going on right now, I think just to publicly thank the pretty small team who, including all of the now ex-Cabinet Office, and we're looking to grow the team, but it's a pretty small team getting through a lot, and so IP is one part of it. Prioritizing from the product workshops, maybe come back to in a second, is another part. But I'm sure you all know it, but I'd just like to publicly thank everyone. Just the incredible passion and just the output we're getting through. So, and obviously, out of respect for the various teams who are, because we're looking to, this is a growth business, and we need to, and we're looking to grow, and we're obviously in discussions right now with the other parties who are eligible to join. As you know, the TUPE process is in place. So I'm not going to comment on that. I think you all know it's in progress. And again, just thanks for everyone for bearing with us as we go through these kind of processes. We're looking forward to everyone who wants to and can join us. There's plenty to do, and it's proving really good fun as well. So it's a great atmosphere in a team, given just how hard everyone's working. So Peter, IP strategy, I'd say we'll need to come back to it later on. Yeah.
So I think that the concern on that, and I appreciate all the comments that you're making, and so I'll give you the perspective that I'm sensing in the community, and just kind of where I've seen the tone on that is, the relationship and the partnership aspect of that. I think for most of the people involved with ITIL over the past 10 to 15 years has been one of what seemed to be an openly symbiotic relationship at first, where IP could be created but then leveraged, and over the past few years maybe a little bit more controlled and a little bit more of a dominating mindset from the IP owner, right? So I hear what you're saying about partnership going forward, but I would sense that there'll be some reluctancy in the marketplace to want to reinvest without a clear communication of when those IP issues will be addressed, how we will see communication. And frankly, if I owned a business, I'm not an ITIL trainer or work for a company that necessarily does that as a core business. So, but if I were, I'd be very concerned on how much I want to reinvest in my business strategy to partner with Axelos going forward without knowing when the timelines might dictate where I sit on recapitalizing on any investments I make. So can you comment on your communication strategy then, at least? I know that you can't commit to any dates here, and we're not looking for any, but do we have a sense for where we are in putting that timeline together? I know we're operating in 2014, but maybe something a little bit more concrete for us.
Yeah, sure. And to use the example of the product workshops, we're looking to do everything as soon as possible. We know uncertainty doesn't help anyone. And so originally there were no product workshops planned. I felt it was a good idea. We did them and we're communicating about them. IP strategy is in progress. It'll be this calendar year we'll be communicating. Yeah, thanks for not asking for a specific date. I can't give a specific date, but again, just that spirit of we're aiming to do things correctly, thoughtfully, also as soon as we can to avoid uncertainty going forward. So also remember, it's great that the business has started now, but the business really starts on 1st of January. So we need to have a lot in place. That's part of it. Dates to be confirmed. They will be as soon as possible. So thanks for I know you understand it, but thanks for hearing it again.
And so I'd like to get some feedback. If I could, I'd like to start with Sharon and Jayne, since you're probably more on the leveraging side of the IP from a services perspective. How does this affect your business and your business strategy, and what you're trying to put together? And looking at Axelos as really a potential vendor relationship.
I'll start if that's okay, Stephen. I think I have maybe dual hats in a way, Matt. As a business owner and someone who's worked with the ITIL and IT service management products for decades now, I'm sitting in the same boat, really, that everyone else is sitting in. The fact that there are significant investments that I've made in those products and services in order to deliver to my customers, and there's a sense of, well, we would really like to know what the future is going to look like, because we want to know if our investment portfolio needs to be retooled, or are we in a static position. But I think with my other hat on, I can look to gain some wisdom for myself as a business owner in that. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is a couple of things. First of all, the ITIL ecosystem, as we've been talking about, has never been static. While a lot of people who think ITIL is this thing, and it's a set of principles and guidance that's documented in some books, and it's a qualification scheme, and it's products and services wrapped around that, none of us who've been involved in maturing and being a part of developing those best practices have ever really sat on our hands and not done anything for a period of time. So in the background, there's always a lot going on. We're always looking to improve the qualification scheme, for example, and working with our delivery community of training providers and exam institutes to make the products better over time. And that work goes on all the time. So if I think about that in that context, as a business owner, I think this is really not a lot different. The Cabinet Office has gone out looking to put in place a different model, which includes a partnership that brings with it the possibility of unencumbering the political agenda that public sector has wrapped around ITIL over the years, some additional investment, freeing up the way we apply innovation. So from that perspective, I think that while, yeah, I'd like to know some of the answers for what Axelos has in mind, the fact is that ITIL has been evolving on an ongoing basis all along, and I can probably think it's a fairly safe bet that that's going to continue. But what might change is the speed with which that can happen now that Axelos is in the picture and we can invest in things like marketing and raising awareness and growing the market. So for me, it's an ongoing evolution that continues to happen. I think that because there's a new joint venture partner in place, or because Axelos is in the picture, doesn't necessarily mean that the view is, okay, we have to change everything now because we're the new kid on the block. I think there's a real sense of knowledge that we've got a product and services that really do add value in their current state. And what we want to do, or what I hope Axelos wants to do, is to evolve that and Stuart said this right at the top of the hour, in a very controlled way. And I think that's what we're seeing. So as a business owner, as a service provider in the community, I do have questions in my mind, but I also have a sense of comfort that this is just more of the same evolution, perhaps just in a different context.
That's great.
For me, it's I think the future's still positive. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Sharon, for that. Jayne, I'd love to get your perspective on it. As one who has been on several different capacities in and around, the ITIL space.
I'm happy to do that. First of all, Claire and I approached this meeting as individual ATOs, but we also came representing the ATO Advisory Council, which is now kind of evolved out of the ATO subgroup. So we're starting to get a lot of input from other business owners and other ATOs in terms of what their concerns are in terms of this transition, but also I think what they're looking for in terms of the future. And as Sharon said, and Stuart said, this has to be done in a very controlled way so that we don't scare the market away. But in the past, one of the things that's occurred is that there's been a little bit of a lack of transparency, maybe not just a little bit, where commercial decisions were made without consulting ATOs. And I very much appreciate the fact that in this situation, there's an intent to reach out to the ATOs and say, okay, let's look at it from the customer's perspective, because as ATOs, we face the customer. We are the ones that have the direct relationship with the customer. So looking at how the ecosystem is going to be built, looking at what a term that we've always used called commercial viability. We can take a very academic approach to how the intellectual property is going to be developed and how the qualification schemes are going to be introduced. But at the end of the day, we are commercial entities, so first of all, there has to be commercial viability, but more importantly, the product that we sell to our customers, and our customers are the beginning of the supply chain that feeds all the way back up to Axelos, is something that we need to be able to reach out to the customers and say, what do you want? And I think in the past we haven't always asked that question, at least going through the ATOs. We've kind of gone through the EIs instead, and the EIs, again, don't have that direct relationship. They don't have the eyeball-to-eyeball relationship that the ATOs do. So I appreciate
for many on the call who just don't understand the ATO-EI relationship. Could you just explain?
Sorry, Matt?
For those who don't understand the ATO to EI relationship, the training organizations versus the exam institutes. Can you explain just real quickly that relationship?
Sure, absolutely. So historically, we have a three-tiered hierarchy in the ITIL ecosystem. So the ATOs, or the accredited training organizations, sell training to customers, most of whom are corporately funded, some individually funded. And so there's that direct relationship with the actual learner and the candidate that will ultimately sit that exam. The exams are delivered to the ATOs via examination institutes, and the ATOs are similarly accredited, licensed, to be able to deliver that training through the examination institute as well. And then we all roll up to the accreditor, formerly APM Group, now Axelos, who will then manage the scheme and also manage the intellectual property use and rights to be able to use that from the training perspective and from the examination perspective. So historically, ATOs work with EIs or examination institutes. Examination institutes report up to Axelos. What we're hoping for, and of course the ATO Advisory Council is hoping for that as well, that it becomes less of a hierarchy and more of a matrix, meaning that we can have a direct relationship with Axelos, the EIs can have a relationship with us and Axelos, and that we are seen more as an ecosystem as opposed to a hierarchical relationship, because sometimes that hierarchical relationship has affected us. Does that help?
Yeah, I think that's very helpful, and the perspective is very helpful too. I definitely want to get Claire's thoughts on that as well too. As a service provider, Claire, what were really your perspectives on the communication so far, as your business strategy and going forward?
I mean, obviously we don't have the full picture yet, but what's come out of Axelos so far has been very encouraging for us in terms of willingness to listen to the community, in terms of, you know, hopefully learning from some of the mistakes in the past. One of the things that was very difficult for the training community was that there were some delays in releasing the version 3 qualification scheme. So it had been marketed, but it wasn't actually available and ready yet. So that caused a real sort of paralysis in the market. So, you know, what we've seen so far is very encouraging, and I think, you know, one of the tangible things that's come from Axelos so far has been this decision that they made that they will act solely as the accreditor and won't act as an examination institute as well, which is different to what was initially said. So to me, that does suggest that they are actually listening to the community, they're listening to that feedback that they're getting, and, you know, they're looking at the way things have been structured in the past and perhaps deciding on ways that they can do things differently and do things better. So it's encouraging. You know, obviously all the training organisations are a little bit concerned. We've seen a lot of change with V3 and then 2011, changing from OGC to Cabinet Office, updating IP statements. It can feel like a full-time job for some training organisations. But we are making our feelings known to Axelos. Axelos so far seem to be listening, and, you know, at this early stage, that's as much as I think we can ask for, really.
Excellent. Thank you, Claire, for that. So before we go, and I want to get the product perspective on this too, Peter, but before we jump into them, you know, can you give us some reaction to, you know, the service providers, which I think, you know, obviously the product side makes a huge piece of the ecosystem in perspective from a, you know, revenue and licensing standpoint, but you know, there's such a vast ecosystem of those actually now. I think even ever most are providing services, you know, inside the space. How can they plan their strategies? And Claire hit something. You just, you know, updating documentation for name changes is just a nightmare. So, I mean, like, what, you know, what's your reaction to some of the comments, concerns?
Sure. Yeah. No, and thanks everyone for continuing to challenge and put forward all these ideas. Just to, in fact, to take it a bit further, because on the call, the Hangout today, we've got a few parts of the ecosystem represented. The way we're looking at it is from an individual. If this is your day job, or you're thinking about getting into the, service management, or you've got foundation, you're thinking about next level, or you're thinking about training your team in this. It's from an end user point of view that we want to really focus on. The best way to keep in touch with that is some of the ideas that have just been mentioned. But there's the vendors, consultants, the end users in organizations. So from a research point of view, a consumer insight point of view, we need to keep going further and using ATO networks. The ATO Council was mentioned just a minute ago. These are great forums to be able to do that, and that's part of it. Okay, so and maybe I didn't fully answer one of your challenges earlier about people who've made investment, the uncertainty of the future. Where Axelos has been created to build on these products. Okay, so it's in all of our interest to keep the we call it product, the qualifications, the guidance as relevant as possible. We're not going to make change for change's sake. It's considered, choiceful moves as we go forward. But absolutely, we're looking to grow. So if you know, I was any part of this ecosystem, we should be. We're trying to give a positive message and work with the ecosystem to figure out how best to grow it. And it's only going to grow if it remains relevant. So I think that's a summary which covers all of the service providers to your most recent question.
Excellent, thank you. So, I mean, you bring up a good point, and I want to get to some of the forums and membership organizations. I don't want to leave that off the table. We definitely want to discuss that, but let's jump to Anthony to get the first start of the product consideration here and how this affects product strategy. And you know, Anthony, you work for BMC, obviously a major player in the IT service management space. You know, what's your feeling pre the workshop, post the workshop, and you know where you are today?
Well, when you think about BMC, the product that we really sell consists of multiple components. For example, the product is of really education, services, and technology. And ITIL, at the end of the day, affects all those components as relates to the delivering value to our customers. So the things that we do as a part of this team, especially the communication of value to the individual stakeholders, the executives, and things like that, affect really how we talk about our solutions at the end of the day. We don't just talk about our solutions from an ITIL perspective, of course. We also talk about it as relates to other best practices like ETOM, Lean, and so forth. But ITIL is a big component as relates to the market and the consumers that actually adopt ITIL and want to know how, from a vendor perspective, you are compliant with ITIL. How can you help me with education, with services, with your approach, with your prescriptive approach to helping us realize value from the best practice? And then with the technology, how does it really support an ITIL type of methodology or framework at the end of the day? So it's very important for us, especially the communication of value, so that we can continue to talk about the ITIL in that sense. And then on the other hand, one of the outside of that, as we said before about the team and the compassion around the team, at the end of the day, I think that the team that's here really looks at ITIL as adding value back to society, so that, you know, the different industry verticals, and for example, banking, if they don't deliver services effectively, what happens? The healthcare industry, if they don't deliver services effectively, what happens to those individual consumers of those services? And we really, at the end of the day, want to make sure that, you know, the value that we see in ITIL is proliferated through the market the right way. So.
Excellent. Stephen, you know, your thoughts from ServiceNow's perspective and the strategy that, you know, you're planning, you know, pre-workshop, post-workshop. Where is your perspective today?
Yeah, I'm going to be a little bit awkward, as is my gift. I mean, I went to the workshop, and I think Anthony and Stuart and probably others on this Hangout will say the same thing, but I didn't really go as someone who receives a paycheck from ServiceNow. I went as someone who's had a number, if not hundreds, if not thousands of conversations around ITIL and IT service management over the years. And in many ways, I was representing, not as me, but as an aggregation of all those conversations and all those opinions, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the indifferent. And therefore, I wouldn't say that the output was really focused on how ServiceNow would move in line with whatever happens with ITIL. I think it was more about, and Angela alluded to this in what he just said, about the consumers of ITIL. And, you know, they're not just the people who get trained or buy books or use consultancy or buy IT service management tools. You know, the real consumers of ITIL, I would suggest, potentially the employees of the people who've got the exams, and probably even the customers, whether they be business colleagues or external customers, who are going to benefit from better quality IT services. So I really would struggle to say that ServiceNow is doing anything deliberately on the back of what's happening with ITIL. It's still something that's important to our customers. It's definitely important from a tender or RFP perspective that there's still that tick in the box that you need to get to say that you have so many pink verified processes. But beyond that, you know, the conversation has moved on, and it's not about ITIL. It very much is, and it's going to sound cliched, it's about using all of those different products and services together such that we can improve ultimately business and customer outcomes. And sorry if I'm talking too much, I just want to pick up on something that Jayne said about the transparency, because to me that really is key. You know, we do get a lot of people talking about the same old faces or the usual suspects, and, you know, when are we going to bring in the thoughts and opinions of the unusual suspects? And, you know, anyone who's watching this either live or on YouTube at a later date, I think it's important for them to realise that Peter and colleagues are really looking for other people to put in whatever opinion, thoughts, etc. to help them or to help influence them in their thinking around it. But we really do need to get as many people as possible to constructively contribute to these conversations rather than snidely point fingers and poke people for not being involved. And I'm going to zip it. I'll even put myself on mute.
That's incredible, Stephen. We're so impressed. But thanks for that commentary. And I think the positive nature is a big component of that. I think we want to stay positive. We want to see things progress. At the same time, I definitely have to say that we cannot underestimate the value of challenging things. And so, while there are many who get bothered by those who are openly challenging it and picking at things and even maybe be going over the top on certain levels of criticism, that is life, and that is nature of knowledge, right? It's subjective, and so I think as we grow knowledge IP, we have to embrace that and just put a strategy in place for that. I hope that Axelos will be planning on that as part of their communications and community development. Stuart, very eager to get your perspective on this, and even though you work for HP, and I didn't mean to call out Stephen necessarily with ServiceNow, it's just we've all read his analyst work, so we know that wasn't the reason he was invited. But I'm just kidding, Stephen. But so from HP's perspective, yes, obviously they're going to turn to you, they're going to look to you for that. But you've been an avid and reliable source of community development and around the space as well too. So please give us both perspectives. But I know many are interested in the product development around the framework.
Actually, for me, this is incredibly frustrating because I had two things that I wanted to say, and Stephen just said both of them. One of them is that I did not come to this workshop to represent HP, although clearly I understand how HP uses ITIL and how important ITIL is to many of our products and services and training and all that sort of stuff. I came because I'm passionate about the future of ITIL and because I care about how we grow IT service management, as Stephen said, to meet the needs not only of my customers, but of my customers' customers, the people who are actually out there trying to make things using IT services that they're getting from IT organizations that we are training and providing tools to and providing guidance to. So one area that I really want to focus on is much more focus on how we create value right the way down that value chain, all the way to those end customers. And the other thing Stephen said that I'd like to pick up on, because I think it's really important, is how we're engaging the community here. I was very, very pleased at this workshop to see about a 50-50 mix of old hands, including people like Ivor who were involved in ITIL version 1, and some of us who've been involved in ITIL and exam systems for a very long time, and people who've previously sat on the sidelines and commented occasionally. I won't mention Stephen, but there are many people who've been commenting on ITIL for ages, and it was great to see them invited in to actually contribute. But I'm just looking on Twitter as we're speaking, and I can see lots of people saying, why wasn't I invited? How do you get an invite? How do you get to be one of the people? And I think they have a valid point, and I don't know what we as a community can do to engage with the vast number of people who are passionate, who do care. I think going along to things like ITSMF events.
Well, Stuart, I was told, Stuart, that actually you guys were just a trial bed because clearly I wasn't invited, so they didn't want to get the real intellects on.
I'm making a really serious point, though. Somehow we have to get away from, and I think we started getting there. I think there was this very solid castle ITIL mentality where, firstly, new people didn't get invited in very often, and secondly, everything was done under very tight NDAs with no discussion, with no transparency. I think it is much better to invite a small group of people to a meeting and be transparent about what you discussed, what the outcomes were, than to invite a small number of people to a meeting and tell them they're not allowed to talk about it. This is a major, major, major improvement in transparency and communication. Somehow we have to get even better at inviting even more people into what you might call the inner circle, where they can contribute and feel part of ITIL rather than feel that they're outside of it, having to watch it on YouTube.
And Stuart, I want to come back to you in a second on a couple of things, but on that point, let's just jump to... that. So Andy, if you're still with us, hello.
Yes, I'm raising
Andy,
my hand.
chime in here about your perspective on.
Well, I just want to add to what Stuart said, and talking about reading Twitter, and I think Peter is going to just run out of the room because I emphasized and talked about it on the workshop as well. I think one of the critical success factors will be once we see a true Axelos engagement on social media platforms. I see and read tweets, I see Google Plus comments and chats and different like Facebook conversations as well, and Axelos is not engaging at the moment. There are people who are continuously complaining on Twitter saying, I tweeted a question, I tweeted a comment, I tweeted an information. And I think some of the bad feeling at the moment going on around, and the Chinese whispers, the gossips, the half-truths, the some information here and there, is due to the fact that people rely on social media conversations. And there is a very active conversation going on in different groups, in different timelines and threads, and it is just growing and growing. And what we don't see is a response from Axelos. I know there were some tweets, but they were very standard corporate, I would say, like sample tweets or responses. There is a real engagement required as soon as possible. To give you an example, after our workshop, I know that the international community, and I've seen them tweeting Axelos asking about whether foreign language ITIL members will be engaged as well or not. And I ended up tweeting back saying, yes, it was discussed on the workshop, and yes, Axelos is going to engage with them. And those who tweeted were very, very grateful, because that's all they needed. They just needed some confirmation that it's going to happen. So I think the sooner the better there will be some real social media conversation and active conversation, the sooner all these different whispers and gossips and bad feelings are going to disappear. So community engagement isn't just running a hangout, isn't just reaching out and sending emails, but responding to those tweets which has been sent in the past couple of months, because
of openness, I need to be elsewhere.
Thank you, Peter.
Just one thing, I noticed Matt's back now, so that, but I thought we were going to have to cover for him. I know we normally get a bad back from carrying him, but thankfully he's back. One thing we shouldn't forget is that a lot of us do spend a lot of time in social media, particularly Twitter, but I imagine we are not the norm. We are probably 10, maximum 20% of the audience or customer base or consumer base for ITIL or any other IT service management framework, methodology, standard, etc. So whilst Andrea's right, we do need to make sure that there is positive engagement on social. There also has to be a serious focus off of social. If I had the answer, I'll tell you it, but we mustn't forget that.
I'd like to maybe, I know you're probably wanting to close off some of the discussions, Matt, or maybe start signing down, but to Andrea and Stephen's point, and I think this is really something interesting that the readers or the listeners should consider. If we were trying to have a hangout like this 5 years ago with Cabinet Office, it would have taken 6 months to get approval to even participate. You would never have seen tweets going out from Cabinet Office without having to have gone through a lot of consternation and internal approvals and whatnot. And I think what maybe the listeners might benefit from the most is if you just think about what it was like trying to get information out of the corporate machine, or the Castle ITIL, as some people have called it, then to where we are today, where we've got Google Pages by Axelos, we have the JV listening, the JV doing, the tweets coming out, the fact that you can get an hour of a CEO's time to sit in the Google Hangout and listen to industry experts and vendors and people just talking about what they think. That would never have happened even a couple of years ago. So what I'd like people to remember, because you can't please everyone all of the time, and yeah, there may be a bit of angst growing in the Twitter sphere and so on, is that things are far better than they were 2 or 3 years ago. And I think that will continue to happen. So we need to really be serious. What has changed, even though we don't have all the answers, and we never will, things are changing for the better. I fully believe that. Some may disagree, but just think about how we wouldn't have been able to do this a couple years ago, and then think about, you know, how good
Sharon,
are things becoming. I think it's tremendous.
Sharon,
So
I think I love, sorry, Matthew, I just wanted to say that I love what Sharon said, but that just shows exactly that, you know, talking about openness, this information for me is brand new. So, and I'm sure that I'm not the only person out there who find this information, you know, new. It was also a very, you know, like unexpected and eye-opening information to realize how small is the Axelos team. Now, these are the type of the open informations which can be shared, and that should stop all kinds of bad feelings or all kinds of, you know, like impatience by others. So once people realize that, you know, there is a shift, there is a positive reach out, we have the opportunity to actually have conversations on social media, but it's a small team who is actually doing it, then people will become a bit more patient, people will be a bit more understanding. So maybe we should get more message out there so everybody will be aware that, you know, don't be grumpy about not getting a response. It's because there is a small team, or it's because, you know, it's actually a big change and it's a positive change. So I'm very grateful for Sharon for your point of view, because for me it is all news. As
I want to thank everybody for the time. Peter, I appreciate you staying over a little bit.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Peter.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Matt, thanks for organising it. Thanks,
Yeah.
guys. Bye.
Bye, Peter.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
What we ought to do as people jump out is make sure that the questions that are asked via Twitter or any other medium are actually addressed. We probably do. All right. The absence of Matthew looks as though he's having technical difficulties. It's probably left to one of us to thank everyone for listening today, and we'll make sure that we do pick up on the questions that have been listed either via Google Hangouts or via Twitter or any other medium. So thank you for your attention, and hopefully there was some semblance of value in the conversation. So have a good one.
Thank you, and it was lovely to see everybody again.
Yeah.
You too.
Certainly was. Thank you.
Cheers now.
Thanks. Bye.
Welcome to the